And I think what's happening currently now with the Americans, the writers and the actors on strike, we were having a conversation earlier with some of my colleagues, and we were saying, this does not start now. In fact, South Africa, we went through it with the whole generations cast being fired long ago. And yes, we were using the old traditional, format, old traditional television format, and not streaming as it is. But the Americans, they've passed the hurdle long ago. At least when they were still using traditional television, they could have a conversation around usage and so on and so forth. But we are still stuck. We, in fact, are way behind. And if there's anyone who should be supporting, our American counterparts, it should be us.
Yeah.
Because we're going through so much. But I want to touch on the question of unity we're not a unionized kind of industry. And do you think, that could be the reason why it takes so long for us to address some of these issues?
I think at some point we need to be honest with ourselves on what the challenges on the ground is. One, we do not have a big enough market. The US can afford to go and strike because there's so many alternative platforms and channels. Even with OTT coming in, IPTV coming in, there's so many broadcasting channels that if a producer or someone, an actress goes on strike, they're not necessarily going to be run out of a job, right? Now, the South African broadcasting or platforms have not grown that much. For the longest time, it's just been SABC, MultiChoice, and ETV. And in that context, the majority of MultiChoice has been third-party channels from international. So we have a growing market in terms of the talent that's coming in, but we still have not growing the platforms that can consume the content and the volumes of the content. So the risk is that, whether we like it or not, people will think according to their stomachs, right? If I speak up and I start being part of this thing, I might lose a job, I might not be the person to be put on. Whereas in other markets in America, and I remember having this conversation with one of our international counterparts, we used to having 70 channels, right, that are just has American content. What's up with you guys, So I think the structure of the industry as well.
It's different.
It's different.
I'll give you, an example. Today, I was at an audition for a mayonnaise brand. I've never seen this brand before. And the brief says they must be able to speak, have an American accent. So my friend says, I didn't understand. I didn't even get time to think, why are we speaking American? I thought it was a new brand that's coming in here and might be, something comical. And she says, what do you think about this commercial? I said, what do you mean? The fact that we're speaking American accent. I'm like, well, it's okay. She's like, don't you realize what's happening? The Americans are striking. They're coming here. And basically what we're going to do, they're going to pay us to do the jobs of the Americans at a fraction of the rate in which the Americans are given. And we're basically selling them out,
Yeah.
And as soon as it hit me, I immediately...
Did you walk out?
No, well, no.
Wow, my point.
And that's the point, exactly. And everyone that I asked, how do you feel? They're like, oh, well, what are we supposed to do? And it's almost like we're forced in a position where we're going to sell out our colleagues across the Atlantic. And it's actually, it's terrible.
Yeah.
It's terrible. It's terrible.
Now, put that into context that 10 years ago, we were producing about 23 films a year. And today we haven't moved much, We're not even producing over 30 a year. So what has it telling you? The market is not...
It's not growing.
It's not growing. And hence, even if you look at the budgets that are coming from the funders, it hasn't grown much, right? So people, the broader industry understands that they are fighting for a very small piece of the pie, right? Because the pie is not big. And so that's when it starts getting, I guess, a bit ugly on the ground,
that's true.
And so it's difficult to get people who are fending for themselves. It's survival of the fittest in the South African context. So to get those people to form a union
Yeah, but I mean, when you look at the industry and the level that it's at here, especially in South Africa, because if you compare South Africa to other countries on the continent, we're a bit further. So we'll use South Africa as a perfect example of where Africa is. Comparison between Hollywood and the industry here, how far off do you think we are, and what are the biggest impediments and challenges that you think we still need to overcome here in the space?
I think that people here, because you have the stories,
Yeah.
right? You have the voice. But I think, well, there's two things. I think that there needs to be a little bit, and I say this because I think it's a similar problem that in the States for minorities in the States, right? Where you don't have access, you know what I mean, to certain things.
Yeah.
So you don't know necessarily, like you guys just skip the development process.
That's so true.
Altogether.
Yeah.
Development is very important to
it's the foundation of your house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so then when you have a script and you're like, no, it doesn't need development. Everything needs development. Every script needs a development process, right? And so I think that as far as story, there has to be this development process added to actually flesh out ideas and develop complex characters.
That's true.
You know what I mean? Because I think that that's what's missing as far as story-wise.
Yeah.
I also think in the mindset of, I think creatives here think that they need someone to tell their story, and you don't need a studio, you don't need government funding, you don't need, you know what I mean? But I think creatives here are always looking, because when you know, even like the Netflix coming here, you know, it's like you don't need Netflix.
That's true.
You know what I mean? Because these machines, they exploit creatives, number one. They take creatives' IP, you know, and it's like you can do it yourself. You know, like Matthew Cherry, back in like a couple of years ago, he shot an entire feature with 2 iPhone 6. You know what I mean? Like 2 cell phones. And then once he shot it, then Apple was like, wait, you did what? And then he blew up.
That's true.
And then, you know, a couple of years later, he won an Oscar.
Yeah.
Now he's directing TV just from shooting on 2 iPhones.
Just starting. He just started.
He just started,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that, so I think creatives on the continent, not just here, you have to get out of the mindset that you need someone to do it, whether it's, you know, an American producer or a government funding, you know, you just do it. Because then once you do it, then people, you have leverage.
They come to you.
Because they come to you.
That's true.
You know what I mean? Like for all of my series, I didn't pitch anything.
At all.
No, they found me on YouTube. You know? And so it's like when you have something, you put it out there and it's good, people will come to you.
Naturally.
Yeah. You don't even have to, like, I've never pitched anything. Till this day, I've never pitched
My goodness.
anything. You know, like people usually just,
Yeah.
Anyway, fast forward 4 years later, I'm in Ghana with just my uncle.
Yeah.
We're being hosted for few things there, and I was in the lobby waiting to get picked up, and there was a TV like here on, and it was these music videos being played, and they were the worst videos you ever seen in your life. It was like from the 70s almost, the 80s, right? And I made a comment. I said, that is bad.
Yeah.
And my uncle said, well, do something about it.
That's it, man.
He said, that's your background too, right?
Yeah.
I said, yeah. He said, you hear enough. You're bouncing back and forth now. He said, I'm sure your brothers and sisters in Africa would love to work with you. You can collaborate and skill up and be value added, he said. I was like, and he said, you hear enough. I was like, oh. And that was the spark that said, okay, yeah, maybe I can do this other stuff and still work
Pursue
on them
business.
and get into the industry, and which I did. So I started off by doing, music videos, the artists there, all the companies will promote everything based on the artists, music artists. So I said, okay. And we've done, back home, we did videos for all the big artists. So I said, okay, I'll get in with one or two of the artists. And it was this big artist at the time. I brought my crew from the US, my little Navy SEAL team, and we rented a house and we set up shop, right? And then this big artist who was supposed to come, we had planned this whole music video for him. He comes with his entourage to the house. He's supposed to bring his deposit. We're supposed to shoot, this is like a Friday. We're supposed to shoot his video Saturday. The guy comes to the house with all his entourage, right? He doesn't have the money. So we're just plucking our fingers. We're supposed to shoot a video the next day. We already, I done booked flights for my crew. I'm burning money. Anyway, the next morning, one of the guys that was in his entourage knocks on the door. He says, listen, I know this is weird. They don't even know I'm an artist too. And he said, I don't have a lot of money, but I got something. And I would love, and then we played his song and I was like, yo, this is dope. First of all, he was a Liberian, half Liberian, half Ghanaian.
Okay.
He was orphaned. He was raised in South Africa by an Afrikaans lady who lived on a farm. So he had this eclectic accent. Liberian, Ghanaian, South African, and he was a black cowboy. He played the guitar, he wore cowboy hats, but he's in Ghana. It was the weirdest thing. But he made this song, it was a hit. I knew it was a hit. And we made this video. That video went viral, blew up, ended up winning all these awards. And we ended up doing videos for everybody. So the videos you see in Ghana and Nigeria is largely due to what we did in that region in terms of being value added and just upping the quality of it. And we won a ton of awards, but that led me into being able to talk to sponsors and brands and banks and to get them as sponsors on television shows that I wanted to do.
That's it.
Which was like the first rendition of Top Actor I did in West Africa in the US. And then I brought it here to South Africa. I did Top Actor South Africa. And then I did Top Actor Africa. But that model of dealing with sponsors to help finance content that we still own. As an entrepreneur, you want to own that IP. You want to think about IP because IP is one of those things that is going to pay you 10 years down the line, 50 years down the line. It's still something that can continue to pay you.
That's true.
So, and I think that's really important. And I think if you look what's happening now in the current climate in Hollywood, people are freaking out because the industry has changed. It's shifted. You know, the way people relied on royalties is now is in jeopardy. It's not the same anymore. The theaters are no longer, the studios are no longer putting out different types of films. They want to rely on their tentpole films, right? The Marvel stuff, the stuff that they know they can get people in those seats. So not taking as much chances with normal films in the cinema, right? And if you make a film for $10 million, $50 million, you have to double that for the P&A just to do a theater run. So that means you have to now, the theater run, the studio split the money from the theaters with the cinema. So, well, if it's, let's use a local brand here, just imagine. Well, the cinema chain gets 50%. The studio gets 50%. So if you made a movie for 50 million and you put another 50 million in and the movie does 30 million in the box office, if it does 100 million in the box office, you're still in the hole. You see? So there's a lot that needs to happen to make that profitable. So that's why the studios rely on the stuff that they know. Okay, Fast and Furious 18.
Yeah.
They know people are gonna come see it, right?
Yeah.
So they can run their numbers. But regular films, that's a problem now. So now we're in a streaming age, right? But meanwhile, the streamers were just doing their thing quietly.
Yeah.
Come give us your content, do your theaters, do your TV, give us the, right? And then it moved into them producing their own original content.
Yeah.
But Hollywood was not really focused on
them.
Now that things are crumbling, the old guard, the traditional way of business being conducted is falling apart. And everyone's now looking, hey, wait a minute. And I feel for the whole situation. I'm on the side of hiring, right? I'm hiring. So I'm always in the negotiation side with talent and agents and stuff. But they also need to know on the producer side, we can't also rely on the residuals either. So it hurts across the board. But at the same time, we have to figure out other ways to make the business still make some sense. But however, the streaming platforms were not created to create it. Their business model it doesn't revolve around residuals. So it's almost like the post office, who's used to delivering letters to people, telling the email companies that make email, we want you to pay for trucks and we want you to pay for people to deliver the email, when that's not their model. So it's a weird space. I hope that there's some compromise that comes into play here because I understand both sides. I just wonder if hopefully there's some negotiations that happen that finds a happy medium, because it's not just about the actors or the writers. Think about the makeup artists and the vendors and the grips and the electrics and all the other people that's out of work right now. So.
Yeah, but how does it look on the ground? Like how?
It doesn't look good at all.
Yeah?
It doesn't look good at all.
I thought maybe those guys are surviving, the normal workers, maybe they've got, I don't know.
No, if that's your normal bread and butter and actors can't come on camera, they can't show up, so there's nothing to shoot.
Man.
And there's nothing to shoot if there's nothing written. So it's a stalemate right now. That's why I hope that there's some compromise that happens sooner than later. Where there's some middle ground. But it's very sad to see.
Yeah, I'm not holding my breath because it seems like the studios aren't interested in budging.
Well, I mean, they're gonna have to. At some point.
PJ, one of the things that, especially on this show, we've been talking about is the lack of development in some of our stories. Where it's just a script writer puts together a script, but there isn't much background. There isn't much foundational work that's done on the characters, on the situations and circumstances, and why B happens is because A was triggered by, and from what you're saying is, these folk tales that we had a sense of that because they weren't in a linear form. Do you think perhaps maybe as young African creatives as well, we are kind of adapting to a new way of storytelling, which is a linear, as opposed to, the way in which we have traditionally been telling stories, which is non-linear and more well-rounded?
It's a tricky one, man, because, you're talking about the effects of capitalism on one.
Yes, sir.
In one side, which is that like we have to be economically viable as a storyteller, filmmaker, right? Yeah. So that means, Snap, you can't go into the whoever channel and say, hey, I want to do this, and I want to do it like this.
Yes.
You have to do it within the confines that they give you. Over and above that, if then you're in, like you guys call yourself Film Biz, right? I've got a very good friend who always tells me it's called showbiz for a reason.
Yes, sir.
You can't have the show without the biz, and you can't have the biz without the show. So, right? So the problem is that, like, if you're doing the biz all the time, then the show has to conform to what is going to grow the biz. Right? If you're only doing the show, you don't have much biz. Yeah? So where it comes in is that, like, I just had, for me, in the past year, I had a little film I made, and
always so humble. A little film I made.
it
Next thing is getting an Oscar.
What? No, man. So, I mean, I remember my commissioning editor and producer speaking about like, hey, you don't see this guy get from here to here. And then I'm like, but do you need to though? Do you need to physically see him in the Nigerian sense of you see a car coming from there, then it drives, then it goes through the gate, and then some guy takes 3 hours to open. Do we need to see that? We know that he's going there. And does the journey have any bearing on what has to happen in the story? No. So do we need it? But because of the kind of storytelling that we've like confined ourselves to in order to make the biz work, you need to, we assume that the audience is used to that. I sometimes think that as filmmakers, yes, our audience is fickle, but that's the nature of an audience. But I sometimes feel like we don't respect it enough. I feel like sometimes, especially Black audiences, we don't see that they're sophisticated enough. Snappy, these guys make like the Matrix work.
Yeah, it's true.
They put up numbers for the Matrix. They put up numbers for the district. You call any movie, Black people go watch it and put up numbers for it.
That's true.
So how do we not respect them as an audience?
So you're saying you're finding that the Black market does not respect the craft in itself, or?
No, I'm saying the Black audience is not respected.
Okay, is not respected.
Yeah.
Thank you. You know, I was on set, right, working on a project, and it was a telenovela. And I remember there was a continuity issue. And the director, the lady said, no, we've got a problem. It's not this. It's like, don't worry. Our audience doesn't care. I was blown away. This guy's saying it doesn't matter. We know our audience. They're tired. They just came back from work. They don't care whether he was wearing a white scarf or a black scarf. They just want to know if, ABC is good. That's it. So I understand what you're saying.
But it's tricky for me because do the same thing on SABC3 and then you've got everybody jumping out the window to talk about like, how do you put out some low quality crap like that?
Yes, sir.
And then my question becomes, but you're not selling a different thing. It's the same thing being done. It's just that one audience just seems to deserve more respect. I mean, to the point where there's a channel on the SABC bouquet that shouldn't be there. It's dead. But for the sake of old apartheid thinking, we're keeping this thing alive. Why? You know what I mean? But those are other deeper questions that like other people, but I'm saying as an audience, I don't think we respect the Black audience enough. I don't think we see how sophisticated it is. I don't think we are willing to really, truly give it what it does. And the things that do well, that give it what it is, what we call clever Blacks are like, oh, that's trash. Really? Then tell me why Mojo Love does so well.
Yeah. Wonderful.
I mean, another home used to say, they say that you have to be a successful filmmaker. Yeah, great. So if you want to be successful, make a Leon Schuster movie. Those are the highest grossing films in the country.
That's true.
But nobody wants to do that. Make a Generations. That's the highest grossing thing. That was the highest grossing thing at the time. But nobody wants to do that. Why? Oh, no, it's garbage. But we said we want to make money. So how come we're not emulating the things that make money?
Sam, I'm so sorry. I have to ask. You just mentioned something that was... So you have a background in IT?
Yes, I have a background
Can you tell
IT.
us briefly about your... I also have a background in IT.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so I know how corporate IT can be very tedious, but once you transfer it to this creative space, your mind is just constantly thinking outside of the box. So tell me, what did you do in IT? How was your brief history, and how do you want to relate it to this space that we're in?
My background in IT, I was more into service management.
Okay.
And more into process development, more into business analysis, where you would actually engage with your business, where if you wish to build a certain system, you would take the requirements from the person that does not understand the technologies and all, and convert it into an understandable requirements for a technical. So you become the middle person between the business and the technical people. So what makes me find this space interesting and easy, it's because of the background. I'm a process person. I would get into construction and just move. Remember, information technology is an enabler.
Yes, ma'am.
So for each business,
It's needed.
Technology is,
It's needed.
So once you master the skills or the arts within the technology space, everything gets easy.
So, I mean, with your history in IT, how do you envision that sector kind of collaborating and coming together with this space that we're in?
I would say IT is an enabler
Yes, ma'am.
for any other business.
Yeah.
You can see also our government is now moving to the digital space. Everything is digitizing. So if you're not investing in skills that will allow you to have the right skills to respond to the opportunities, And I always say this, if our grandmothers learned how to use WhatsApp, what are we waiting for?
That's true.
Yeah, because it's there and it's not going anywhere. So we need to invest our time and energy to learn the skill.
But I mean, answering your question, what we're waiting for, there's currently a huge strike that's happening now in the United States where writers and actors are striking against, obviously, the big streamers and the big studios, against the implementation of artificial intelligence in terms of, replicating the images of, we call them background actors and so on and so forth. And also, removing the great work in which the writers are doing and putting artificial intelligence. So I think sometimes artists do have a foot to stand on by being afraid of engaging with technology. How are you kind of breaking down that barrier? And do you foresee us actually overcoming this current huge problem that's there? I mean, just because we're not seeing it in our faces, what's happening in LA, doesn't mean it's not affecting us. I was looking on online, and there was one Tashina Arnold, who was an actress who was acting in Martin, old comedy. They were in the streets, striking. And it reminded me of what was happening with Generations a few years ago, where actors down-tooled and they say no. So we're in the same thing. But how do you think our creatives can use tech as you're saying, an enabler, and as not so much as a replacement of their services?
Okay, so what I can say, hence I'm saying that they need to invest their time.
Yeah.
Like you can see how we've shifted from your normal TV to the streamings,
digital.
platforms, the digital. So that's just where we're going. It's like internet in the old days. We never had, but now the access that we have, it makes the research easy.
So true.
Information from it's just there, So it's a matter of actually learn to shift our mindset and just move with the flow and easily adapt, because those that jumped into the internet opportunities,
early,
they are very rich
far.
right now. They
That's
are
true.
very far as well.
That's true.
So we need to take these opportunities as they come, and we just jump and we see. And talking about that, talking about Amajuba, you like, I'm a visionary.
Yes, ma'am.
And how I see it unfolding, I see us launching a production house, a big production house in Newcastle, which is in our area. And I'm looking at opportunities of digitizing the content that we would be making there, video on demand, and getting people to subscribe. And start consuming content. We're not looking at going the old ways, traditional ways of go commission and license. We're looking at monetizing our own content because people are actually, they're here. They're on TikTok, and whose content that are they consuming there?
Yeah, that's true.
You
And I've
understand?
seen this content. It's highly relevant content that you don't see in mainstream media.
Exactly.
Guys putting together a story in the hills of Newcastle or Durban. I've seen that stuff. Obviously, because I'm not. I don't really understand everything they say, but
Yes.
I just love how raw and truthful, some of these stories are, and very comedic.
Assembly is like boring. It's like a guy standing there, Anyway, so that was my intro. And I was shy and introverted in the beginning because I was shocked. I didn't know what the hell was going on. My little Europe world had been shattered, Who are these people, So that was my introduction. But my escape to that was by these apartments where we lived, next door, about a block away, which is walking distance, was this cinema. And it was like the Americans call a grounder cinema, where they had 2 movies screening back to back the whole day, from morning till night, for a week, and then they'd change them. And my mom would go shopping in that center, drop me and my brother off there, just leave us in there. Halfway through a movie, you just walk in and it's a Chinese, badly dubbed Chinese martial arts movie. And you're watching that halfway, then it stops, it's interval, and then you start watching a badly dubbed spaghetti western. Yeah. And then you carry on watching the Chinese movie afterwards, and over again, until your mom comes back and says, hey guys, let's go home, you know? Sure. So that was where I first fell in love with cinema. And the first time that I really felt something for a movie was when I watched the Sergio Leone spaghetti westerns. Oh, yes. Which, and why now, when I think about why did I fall in love with them, was because visually they were strong. They had great soundtrack, because there was this great pairing of Sergio Leone and the great Ennio Morricone, who's one of the best composers ever of all time. They got together. They were both starting out, and they made these movies, and they were a big success. Now, the fun part of these things was that they were co-productions. The Western had been dying in the States. The typical Western of the American hero wearing the white hat and being this goody two-shoes was dying. That storyline was going. And
like Chuck Norris type figures. Nothing
Chuck
can
Norris,
touch them.
But more like Henry Fonda, those guys. They were like clean-cut Gregory Peck, clean-cut guys. You knew they were always good, no matter what. Mostly in most of the movies. And now the Italians took that. They were coming from the 60s of doing these sword and sandal movies, what we call, the Roman epics and Greek epics, Greek gods, whatever, Hercules and all that. And those were dying out, and they reinvented the Western. Now, they turned it on its head. They turned that script upside down, because they made it into, the hero wasn't really a hero. He wasn't exactly a good guy. He was more of an anti-hero, and he was he was just as bad as the villains, but just maybe a little bit nicer. But he was killing people for money, whatever. So the interesting part is that these were all co-productions funded by French, German, Italian, and Spanish. Okay. And Spanish, they would use the exteriors to shoot those movies, because they had the landscape of that Western landscape. They've got the landscape. And in Italy, they would shoot it in the Cinecittà studios in Rome, the interiors. Now, you had all these countries who are funding these movies, as you well know. Yeah. If a country funds a movie, they want some of their people in it. Because if the Germans are putting in money, they want a German actor to sell that movie in Germany. True. So you got a German actor, French actor, Spanish actors, Italian actors, and an American.
How do they solve? Wait. But so many countries, and what happens with the language problem?
Well, here's the fun part. All these movies were shot with no sound. Hello, that's a nice way of getting around it. And that's why they were badly dubbed. Okay. So you got Clint Eastwood coming over, who wasn't a star in America. Yeah. He was just doing TV, Rawhide or whatever. And he comes to America to do this movie, to make some money or whatever. Definitely cynical about this whole thing. And now he's got to walk on set, and he's got to say his lines to an Italian guy who doesn't understand what he's saying. Then there's another villain who's a Spanish guy, and another villain who's a German. The director's Italian. None of them can speak to each other. So I'm thinking, well, this the Sergio Leone, the director, he wasn't like a highbrow director, and he must have been a very passionate guy, because how do you talk to your actors? When you've got to be subtle as a director, don't tell the actor what to do. Blah, blah, blah.
He had to.
He was like, okay, Mr. Eastwood, you take the gun, you point it on the guy's head, you shoot like this. There's this fat guy running around the set. And how interesting is that they made these wonderful movies, which were shot beautifully. They were very violent, but there was this Italian sense of humor, European kind of feel to it. And they recreated this, and they became so popular that they landed up making thousands of these. Sheesh. And they changed the titles and even changed the director's name. So they wanted to sell it as an American stuff. So you'd have got Clint Eastwood as the American guy, but then they'll take Sergio Leone's name and change it on the poster to an American name. So people, when they go watch it, they think it's Americans. So Clint Eastwood shoots his movies, thinking whatever.
So sorry, Costa. So would they redub these films in English, Spanish, in the languages of all these territories? Okay.
So that's what they would do. And the titles and everything, you know, the whole opening sequences and all that, put all these other things. Clint Eastwood goes back to America and he finds out he's a star and he doesn't even know what the hell happened. But these movies that he made, these cheapies, A Fistful of Dollars, which was very cheap, about a guy walking into a town and influenced by a Japanese movie called Yojimbo, which was by Akira Kurosawa. And, you know, those were... Sergio Leone was influenced by that director, and he made the samurai epic into a western. Then that was a success. They made A Fistful of Dollars, and then the big epic movie, which was The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, which just blew everything apart. It was just a fantastic movie. So these were movies, and that's the movie that made Clint Eastwood famous. And I fell in love with that for the first time, as in cinema. Was wow. You know, when I watch these Sergio Leone movies, and as a kid, you don't know about directors, you don't know who the director is, but you're feeling good watching these.
Yeah.
And when you're watching another movie, you're not feeling that.
As good, yes.
Yeah, because you don't have the Morricone's music, and you don't understand why, but you're thinking, these are crap.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I was watching that, and I was watching, there was, you know, you'd walk into the cinema. There was no age restriction because I would watch everything. Hammer House Horrors from England, Dracula, Christopher Lee, biting voluptuous women's necks. You know, as a kid, what do you know? But you're watching this, people coming out of coffins and his brides, the vampires coming out.
Because how did you watched all these films? Did they have age restriction?
No, they clearly didn't, because I only stayed in Van der Belt Park till I was in grade 1 before we moved to Vereniging. And I watched all these movies in that cinema at 5 and 6. So you're sitting in there in this flea pit little cinema called the Mikado, which had this Asian feel outside. It wasn't fancy. And everybody's smoking. And here comes the Tanni in the morning from a house with her curlers and her nightgown and her slippers. And she pulls in, but you didn't know it any different. It's not now. It's all very fancy. They'll throw you out if this, see you coming in there with curlers. In those days, that's what it was. And that was my influences. So I had a big, strong... a love for cinema because of that coming from Van der Belt Park.
Why did you guys it seems as if you've made a deliberate choice to go into films as opposed to TV. Yeah. Why that choice?
So it goes back to ownership, right? At the moment, the way that we do TV in SA is the broadcaster owns the IP. So you almost gun for hire, even as a producer. True. Who created this concept. It was after a trip to Nigeria where we just completely fell in love with how Nigeria does entertainment. Yeah. That's why their artists are rich, right? That's why their movies actually make money. They have somehow developed an audience that loves the stuff that they make, and then they've found a way to monetize that. So I personally didn't want to go back to that thing that scared me of, I've done all these things, I've been on all these shows, but I actually don't own any of that. So I'm not eating from any of that pie, minus when you're in production, they give you a budget, you shoot, and then you. And also, just a silly example, but what really dropped the penny for us, we went to Discop. I'm sure you know Discop, right? Yeah. We're at this market, and these buyers, every time they kept hearing we're from South Africa, these are international buyers. They would come to us and they'd be like, "Oh, great! Show me who I can buy Generations from." Wow! And I was like, "I think you'd have to." They're like, "No, we're looking for the producers." Generation?
No.
Like,
not here.
Call SABC. They might help.
But I'm sure that opened your eyes.
Yes, because we're like, that they assume, like in other industries, that the producers would be the people to talk to if you want to license, if you want to buy, if you want to franchise, if you want to. And it's not like that in SA. Not like that. So for us, we were just like, for now, because we're scared of how little we have acquired over the years in the industry. We just want to own something. And that's not to say that that model is not sustainable. It's just not what we wanted when we started. And we're still a new business. We've only been in this entrepreneurship thing for 8 years. So For now, we are loving the film kind of model. We will get into TV, and then we'll have different conversations. We just didn't want to start with it.
Sure.
And the fear was always, we didn't want to get comfortable because the money is nice. Provided that you can, turn it around and you get more and more shows and you get comfortable in that space. We wanted to bootstrap it while we still had the energy to bootstrap it. And then all the other conversations will come with growth. Because I think also it's harder to convince people to back you when you don't have experience for a series or a telenovela. And as a business, we were babies, right?
But I get the sense that also the industry is getting ready for you. Things are changing, with the strike that's happening, the model is changing. And I'm sure by the time you start really dipping your feet into the world of television, they would have hopefully, from an executive level, they would have at least opened up the discussion a bit more to giving the creatives more IP. Because that's where we're going. And
even if it's not all of it.
It's just something.
Just let's share it.
That's true. It's crazy. I mean, after 94, we had a whole campaign to kind of, work on the sense, on our mentality, being optimistic about the Rainbow Nation. I'm sure you were part of that explosion of celebration in that time. What, as we just kind of geared into democracy, did you see that your style of storytelling or your subject matters, did it kind of change, or what gear did you go into as soon as we went into 94?
Well, I think a lot of artists were left at a position where they're finally finding them a voice, a kind of voice of opposition, but then you're not in opposition anymore, and it's a weird thing because you're trying to, if you like, get up the courage or find the language or find the way of talking about stuff, and suddenly you want to make all these films and people say, oh, but that's done, it's past, it's finished, And I spent a long time working on a project at the end, before the end of apartheid, but moving into that new age about Robert McBride, who was a Mkhonto Wesizwe operative, and he was very well known at that time. He was very successful at smuggling arms into the country. A lot of people hated him because he put a bomb in a bar in Durban. But he was, he was a fighter, and they arrested him and he escaped. And so it was an incredible story. And I went to see him when he was on death row, and I pretended to be a friend of the family, and I spent like 30 visits with him. Couldn't write anything down, but I memorized everything he told me, and then I would go and sit down in some Pretoria takeaway place and write it down, or when I had some time, I would go to Mabopane and go and visit Dolly Ratebe, who insisted on making a meal for me. And, it was, so this is all merged into one at that time. And I didn't have much money, but I tried to use the means I had to develop this story. And this was 89. And I even went to Lusaka and I went to speak to Chris Hani, and I gave him the short version of the script to read. And I was amazed that he would meet me, but I think it's also on the basis of having made Mapantsula, and it was a film that was seen in Lusaka as well. And he came with his wife and his 2 kids, and I'm amazed, just somebody who was living in such a dangerous condition with a price on his head would do that. And he sent me a note the next day. He said he thought it was well researched and wished me well with the project. And I've almost found money for it twice, but to make a film with the politics, which is kind of a more radical film than Mapantsula, because it's kind of by any means necessary, and difficult moral things like civilians dying in a bar from a bomb. People were very scared to put money into that. So it almost happened once with a company, big French company who did Bertolucci films. They went bust with a Bertolucci film, so that didn't happen. And then it almost happened again with a Spanish producer who'd made some very good films. But by that stage, Robert McBride was out of jail, and then suddenly he didn't want the film to be told like this anymore. I think it was a very balanced story, but it wasn't heroic enough for him. And, well, her real life is never completely heroic. So I spent 5 years of my life working on that, and it didn't happen. But this is the journey of filmmaking. Some of these things work, and some don't work out. And years later, I made Shepherds and Butchers, which is about death row. And that whole experience with Robert McBride in death row and walking through those buildings and being creeped out by it and having nightmares from being in there, all of that helped me at the end of the day make the other film.
What led you to becoming a filmmaker? When did that, switch actually just flip and say, this is where I'm going? My God, I'm going here.
No, you know what, ne? I'm like any other black kid in this country. I wanted to be a YoTV presenter.
Oh, okay.
Yes. I'm sure even you.
No. Did I? I don't know. I don't remember. I had a crush on some of the presenters, that's for sure. But I don't know if I don't know. Maybe I did. I don't remember. Yeah.
No, I wanted to be a YoTV. I saw Abu Musa. I was like, I can do this.
Okay. And your personality, I must say, because I was going to ask, you've got such a bright personality.
Thank you.
You're the kind of person who walks in a room and you're noticeable.
Oh, wow.
You really, for real. So and I find that happen a lot with very strong performers. Very strong performers, not just any performer, So I'm not surprised that this is where it started.
This is I've actually been told that I should have been an actor by a few important people in the industry.
But I'm sure as a producer, when you check the pay slips, you're like,
it's
like,
why Nizolamba?
no, let me put a disclaimer to our
parents
guys,
right.
It's not that bad, okay? It's not that bad.
Jokes.
Anyway,
Yeah, so I wanted to be a presenter. And then I didn't know how.
Yeah.
I am a young girl in the Val.
Ish.
I didn't know how. And then I started writing. In English, when you write creative essays.
Yeah.
So I started writing, and then my grade 4 teacher actually said to me, I always look forward to your creative essays. I was like, oh, really? She's like, yeah, you should write. So I started writing in a little notebook, and I started writing little stories. And in grade 8, I had a full book, and then I actually wrote a novel, and I made close friends read it, and they're like, "Girl, you was good. You was."
What was it about?
Look, in hindsight, they were lying, because the story was here and here.
Okay.
It wasn't consistent, right? And which is why I feel like artists should go to school,
it's so important
to hone their craft.
It's so important
because when I got to varsity and I was in the writing class, I realized the reason why my story was here is because I didn't have an end in sight.
Yes.
So you start a story knowing how it's going to end, and that changed my writing.
Yeah.
But let me go back quickly to how I wanted to become a filmmaker. And so I started writing, and then I was like, but I still love TV. So how do I merge these two loves, And then one day I was on channel 100 on TSTV.
Which one is that one?
When you haven't paid your subscription.
Oh, that one.
Yes. And it's the only thing that
you can see.
Yeah.
And that's the one that shows everything, little adverts of everything.
Little adverts and behind the scenes and all of that, right?
Yeah.
And so I caught up behind the scenes of a film. I can't remember what the film was, but they were speaking to the writer-director of the film, and he was just talking about how how much he loves what he's doing, and the story of writing to actually directing it, and going into post and all of that. And I was like, I want to do that. I want to write and direct. And I was in grade 8, and that was it. I want to write and direct, and told my parents, they're like, you're going to be hungry. And they hoped that I'd grow this love, but I didn't. And as soon as I matriculated and Vit said, come through, let's do film. And I went there running. And then,
you didn't apply for anything else?
I did, of course. I have black parents, bruh.
Yeah.
So I had to apply for doctor.
So, then you got in, and from there you knew that, okay. we're running.
And then I found out about producing. And I was like, well, by directing and
What did you major in?
I majored in everything because Wits doesn't really let you major in one thing.
Okay.
So I majored in writing.
Yeah.
I majored in cine. Hated it. And I
What's
made
cine?
cinematography.
Okay.
So the DOPs
Cool.
hated it.
Cool.
I respect DOPs because I
Yeah.
could never do that for a
real.
living.
For real.
Never.
For real.
And editing, hated that as
Yeah.
well. So they didn't have producing at Wits. So then I did the film performance management. So I can actually be your agent, Marcus.
Hey man, I coming to think of it, I've been needing an agent.
I can be your
to
manager.
make a switch,
But yeah, so that was the closest thing to production.
Yeah.
And so that's right.
I went back and I thought to myself, who's the love of my life? Who's the one that got away in my life? So I think and I think and I think, and then I find her. And I was like, okay, cool, that's the girl. I go to Insta. I put in her name. She has a family now, married, but not in love with her, don't worry. But I needed to do this for the exercise. So she's married with children. So what I did, I go to Instagram and I visualize now. I look at her and I visualize myself in those picture situations with her.
Instead of the husband.
Instead of the husband. So if they're taking a picture in Greece, I go for 30 minutes meditating on how did we plan Greece? What did we do? What did we think? Who put the children in the back seat? All of that. And then I had her leave me. And then I came back and I left that history.
So wait, so in your visualization, she leaves you.
She leaves me and I needed that.
Okay.
So when I was done the next day, I remember calling my mom and I was like, I'm so sad. I don't know why. And I'm driving. And then, because I take drives sometimes when I'm really feeling sad. So I just go to the shopping center. It was at night, like past 8. I take a walk around it. And then I get back into the car and I start crying. And I was like, flip, it's because of that exercise I did. Because the character in my script, in that story, gets left. So I did the exercise and had her leave me in that because I had to feel the love. I had to. So if anyone can make any type of film. I'm not here to tell people what types of film they must make because I think every type of film has its market and there are people who crave for it.
That's true.
I'm not a big fan of reality, but it's not like I'll go home and while my sisters are watching the Kardashians, switch it off. I'm not gonna tell a friend of mine who's like, oh, a reality series, I'm shooting this. Hey, should I shoot it? And I'll say, no, it's not creative. I'm like, dude, go get your money.
Boom.
Go get your money, dude, because we all
do what you gotta do.
There ain't no thing called reality TV money or
money.
drama money. Dude, they don't
money.
care when you're paying rent, installment.
No.
There's no such. We make money wherever. If you see me making reality TV, dude, don't be like, Zo, I saw you on that thing, nigga. Dude, times are tough, chief. That film we made didn't work out, dog. So I need to be shooting here, housewives of Polokwane. So leave me alone. But anyways, in terms of the authenticity that I crave, and I just can't work with projects that don't feel authentic to me. I can't watch films that don't feel authentic to me. I have to let me put it to you this way. The difference between authenticity and mediocrity. An authentic film is a film that is based on real life human experiences. Or humanized experiences. So whether it's a story about dogs or aliens, they'll still be given human characteristics. So when you watch an authentic film, you're like, that looks familiar. That looks familiar. I resonate with that. Now, a mediocre film is based on other films, which is why it is just a cliche. Let me give you an example. You're a well-traveled man. You've been to airports, you've been to train stations, bus stations. How many times have you been in an airport and seen a guy sprinting down past security and through the boarding gates to go and propose right before his wife leaves right before the love of his life leaves for another country?
In real life?
In real life.
Never.
Do you know what the security is going to do to him? Imagine it all out.
They will hold the guy, they will hit him, they will turn him around.
By the time you get to your wife, you will be on the floor, bleeding. You will be bleeding.
And how many films have you seen?
How many films have you seen at the end of the story? No, right before she goes, I love you, Sally. And you're like, what is this based on?
Yeah.
It is based on this writer having seen another film that happened in, that who saw another film that happened in as well. But it's not based on the human experience.
But what happens, brother? What happens now, especially in this climate that we're at? And we've seen it many a times, and you know, it's the streamer owns the right to this concept. They've done it somewhere in Puerto Rico. They're like, okay, this works. Successful couple, middle-aged, you know, nearing their 50s, get bored of each other. Wife sees a young guy, falls in love with a young guy, love triangle. But it's literally, you take this concept, you plant it here, put it in the South African context, and it works. And then we've seen it also with Bettina Way too, and Ugly Betty and so on and so forth. But, you know, so clearly, you know, they're able to score those numbers and business as usual. So, I mean, why you and me, guys who are passionate about film crying, you know, the suits are making money, man.
No, the thing
Let's jump on the bandwagon.
Yeah, mediocre films, don't get me wrong. Mediocre films are usually very successful.
Yeah.
Because they're tick
By the way,
box.
I'm not calling anyone mediocre.
No. I am, but I'm not naming people. I'll name them off camera. But at the end of the day, I always understand that as filmmakers, we all can't do the same thing. Not everyone can make authentic films. There's certain people who don't want to watch authentic films. Yeah. They'll tell you, this, I love seeing that, and it makes them cry. So who are we to judge them? So I don't judge. You watch reality, I'm happy I can still be your friend. I can still respect you. So I'm not putting us on a pedestal and everyone else like, oh, higher art and yes, let's talk about Stransky and Kubrick and.
But I mean, you know, when you think about it, you know, in SA we do have some amazing DPs, but, you know, but sometimes the opportunity to create content that shows off your skill and your interests. You know, it becomes a bit rare and scarce. Yeah. So, no, how do you find ways to ensure you grab opportunities that show off your skill, your kind of, you know, what you're interested in? You know?
So the one thing we never talk about is process. Like, I've got a process, you know, and my process allows me to kind of to always be thinking in that dimension, you know, in that spectrum of thought. So when I get a script, right, I'll read it and I'll just have pictures. My laptop's full of like screen grabs from pictures from other movies. And I'll always make that kind of a reference to a certain scene that I want to do, you know, in the show. So the idea of what I want to do is, by the time I get on set, it's imprinted in my head. I make sure that I get on set knowing, like I'm shooting an 8-part series right now. I know the story from one right up till the end. All I need is just the director to be like, so in this scene, this and this, and I'm like, oh, okay. I've got, you know, I know exactly what I'm doing. It's a well thought of thing. And I've learned that I need to allow the director to kind of take the lead and let me follow. You know, that for me, I find saves time. I don't have to figure everything. I don't have to come into the scene having figured everything out. You know, let the director lead, and then
you follow.
I follow with whatever ideas I've got. You know, that for me has been a lot more efficient, and I don't have a back and forth with the director. I don't have a back and forth.
You just get it once, boom.
Yeah.
And you're able to go.
Shoop, I let him go in and then I follow.
Yeah.
And then
it's like hard work versus smart work. Right?
Yeah.
You don't want to be the steering who's like, oh, but I was thinking. Yeah. He's like, no, let's do this. And then your thing is, how can I support?
How can I support it? Yeah.
Which is brilliant, man. Kind of knowing the role that you're playing.
Yeah.
You know, as a gaffer, you've worked in huge productions like you, and that's where, you know, that's actually where you started in the bigger scheme of things. And many people, their wish, their career ambitions is to end up where you started, you know. But, you know, you don't mind working on lower budget films. That's the funny thing, you know, the short films, even films that may not be as well developed as the bigger budget films. I mean, how come you still lend your skills to various parts of the industry?
I think what I've like learned is like I started to fall in love with film itself, and unfortunately I landed in like lighting department. And
Interesting.
and stuff like that. So like when I do like filming and stuff, I don't look at money. I just look at creating the good picture. So I don't mind working for free as long as I'm gonna bring my best and let things happen.
That's a very powerful way, you know, of approaching the craft. And many short-sighted people will think, he's not talking. They don't know that on the long run, you're going to make more money than the one who's chasing every buck. And that's usually how it works, you know. So I really respect you for that.
I did many 3Ds where like I was told that, okay, we'll be doing a short film for 3 days or 4 days. This can come over. Please be aware that we don't have anything to give you.
Sure.
So I'll use my own petrol money, and I'll use my own food and my own time. Sometimes you find that, like, you know, I was supposed to be busy doing something which was going to pay me, but I decided to do that because I want to
gain experience.
Because like I said, that there's a need for me to be there.
Sure. Yeah, man. That's what we call being purpose-driven, isn't it? Yeah, man. But there's also this thing, you know, that a big mistake that we make is that we look at the industry in America and we try and copy and paste that into this space, you know. The fact that you have been acting for so long, one would expect you to be, you know, to have a huge ego, to drive a big Mercedes Benz, and to walk into a place as if, you know, you're the first citizen of the country. But that's not the case on the ground. That's not how you create longevity within a space. Do you feel as if what people are being fed about what this calling actually is incorrect? And if so, what is this thing that we do? How would you describe it in your words?
It's very difficult to put into words. Like, what is this thing that we do? You know, we get paid to do something we really love and that we're really passionate about, and that we will. They say the thing that is your calling is something you would do even if you weren't getting paid for it.
True.
I've done many a production where they're like, come, just can you do this? We just need, I was like, cool, what do you need me to do? Because I want to be a part of something that gives birth to somebody else's production. You know what I mean? I want to be something that you've been thinking about for years. And they're like, Ilse, I want you in my production here. I really, you know, I've heard that so many times. I said, when it's there, it's happening. And things come to fruition, and it brings me such pride to be a part of somebody's birth into the industry. Do you know what I mean? I was a part of that education on how this person has flourished and grown, you know. And yes, we don't have a star system. There are advantages and disadvantages to that, obviously. You know, I don't even think that is going to be a thing anymore. The stars are going to be the stars. The real stars are going to be the influencers.
That's where we're going, right?
That is where it's at already. You know, it's happening all over the world, and we need to decide. We need to know where we fit in and how we're going to navigate the space that we find ourselves in, because we're going to have to reinvent ourselves. Honestly, we're going to have to some degree at least. You know, there's nothing ever stays the same.
True.
As much as we want it to, nothing ever stays the same. So we've got to think about how we as performers are going to evolve with what's coming.
I think when I think about the local film and television industry, there is excitement. And the reason for that excitement is you know, as much as there might be whatever challenges that we're experiencing as the industry, but more than the challenges, there's, you know, hope for something, you know, better, something beautiful. And I think for us, even more so, where your big, what excites is, you know, where your Hollywoods and all these other big film industry players, they've almost somewhat reached a pinnacle in terms of the kind of content and the kind of things that they can do. Whereas for us, we're still at the earliest of stages, you know?
Now, I've got a father who's an accountant.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And, you know, when I sit down with him every year when I'm doing my taxes, I kind of like explain, no, this is what we get. And it just doesn't make sense to him. It's like, no, you're wrong. You're doing something wrong. This doesn't make sense. How come you guys are working on things this way? And I later learned that there's a huge difference between a normal accountant and a production accountant.
Absolutely.
What's the difference, Jane?
First of all, production accountants, it's not high finance. But the art of being a good one is being able to get through volume accurately and quickly, and just being on top of every single thing that has an effect on finance in the film. An accountant is more on the higher side of finance. They're wanting to look at debentures and shares and things like that, which we don't get involved in as a production accountant. And it's longer hours. I wouldn't say harder work, it's a different type of work. You're also dealing with creatives all the time.
Which must be a lot.
Yeah, exactly. And you're often the one that has, is having to say no. Not that, CAs and normal accounting in the commercial world don't say no. They also say no. But it's quite different. I've often tried to place a normal accountant, when I say normal accountant, a CA, put it that way, a CA as opposed to maybe a bookkeeper, qualified accountant on the, I wouldn't say the lower side, that's probably not the right word, but not a CA who's normally dealing on a much higher level. To put them on a production, it's frustrating for them, I've found, over the years.
In what way?
Yeah.
How come, where does the actual frustration
It can be boring.
come? Okay.
It can be boring, and it's not high finance. It's general bookkeeping, really, is what we do. As production accountants. Yeah.
Okay.
But the art, I believe, is getting through the volume accurately and understanding what causes a financial implication. Even a call sheet that you get. A call sheet will tell you these people are supposed to be arriving on set on this day at this time, and your daily so you know already that it's going to cost you, and these amount of crew, and then your daily progress report will tell you, did it actually happen? So those are your it's every piece of paper in the film in production has a financial implication. So you've got to look at it like that. But a CA is normally on a much higher level on accounting levels. Yeah.
Okay, makes a lot of sense. So, I mean, you've set an amazing standard for both your companies, with the quality of work that you guys do, the First Order and the Refinery. A lot of people look up to you, as sort of a role model of some sort. What tools do you think they need to, or what nuggets, can you share with us from your personal journey that, young people can incorporate in their lives to become the next Alistair Orr?
Sure, thank you for saying that. It's like quite humbling. I mean, I don't know what the recipe is to be me. Like I'd change a lot of things about the way I've done things and how I've done things. I would say the big thing is to put your money where your mouth is.
Yeah, man.
Like back yourself when
No one does.
no one does. Like,
Yeah, man.
yeah, and the technology is there. You can do it. You can go out and shoot a short film with your friends right now. We could do it right now with what we've got. And also, like, I'd just say it's resilience. I've been told no a million times. Like if I listened to anyone, I wouldn't be here today. Like, I just had this like stupid, dumb, blind faith in myself. Yeah, it is. It's embarrassing thinking back to the things that I've said to people or like the things that I've done. Like when I finished my first film, I went to the States with DVD copies of it, you know, looking up addresses of like Hollywood producers, you know, knocking on their doors going, can you take my DVD? You know, and it's like you're sitting on that plane going, what the fuck? I'm like, this is mad. I've got like 100 DVDs. Like, this is insane. You know, and like, it's soul crushing when you put your savings into a film that, you know, you expect people, you can't even give it away overseas. You know, people won't even answer the door for you, you know? But I knew, it's like, I don't need 100 people to take it. I just need 10 people to take it. And I don't need 10 people to like it. I only need one person to like it. And that's what happened, you know? It was. I showed it to the right person at the right time. And they gave me an international film.
So you had to take that risk, that crazy risk.
Yeah. And it's like, you don't understand like the amount of interns I get asking, like, will send me one email asking, oh, can I come and intern for you? You know, and like the answer is always yes. Like, we don't say no to people who want to learn. Like, you can come and learn from us. Like, we give it away. Don't hear from them again. You know?
Why?
I don't know. It's like there isn't a hunger. I don't know. It's like there's a want for it, but there's like not a hunger for it.
Which is what I think is happening in this generation, right? This microwave generation where everything just happens so easily. As you were saying, there's no anticipation to the release of a film. You just switch on your telly, it's there. And I think with these kids, perhaps that fight that you had in your younger days, you don't see as much, and it's as a result of what's happening just across the board. Yeah, everything is ready made. Sad though. Sad. I think also the problem is, as creators and filmmakers, that we tend to, and which is natural, I guess, as artists, we are lone rangers, but you know, this business that we're in, this craft is a highly collaborative one.
Exactly.
And it demands of you to respect, you know, the craft of your peer and your colleague.
Yes.
So once you think, oh no, all there is to write this and scheduling it and you forget there's actually a person who's born
for this,
for makeup. There's a person who's born for the music. So the kind of passion and spiritual energy you're infusing in your craft, the other person is doing it as well. But as soon as you say, no, all the budget goes to this.
Yes.
Oh, well, music, this gets off it, then you're going to have a project that's not well balanced.
Yes.
And everything.
The visuals might be all right. And you wonder why, because let's not underestimate the audience.
That's so true.
Let's not underestimate the audience. Yeah. Let's not use the same libraries. Let's not use the same tracks for the same productions. Yeah. You know, the audience sees this. You know, there was a series, and somebody on Twitter mentioned this. Like, imagine a scene where somebody's telling you your mom died, and they play a calm song in the background.
Wow. That's literally what happened.
Yeah, like a gom song, no strings, no violin, a gom. Hi, and the person who noticed this is probably not in the filmmaking industry, but they notice this. The audience notices. Let's not underestimate our audience, right? Me as a film composer, you as a filmmaker, you as an actor, as a director, as an exec, they know. because once you put your stuff out there, it's kind of like the internet. It's out there. It's there for people to criticize even 20 years down the line. And if you put out mediocre work or works where you didn't put in your 120%.
Now, with that said, how does that policy or philosophy of not judging your characters, how does it inform your personal life? Where, at times, you'd find that a younger version of yourself would say, I will never do this, that, and the third. And after some experiences in life, you find yourself exactly where you thought you'd never be. Do you incorporate that same sense of non-judgmental, approach to your own personal life in order to just kind of keep going? Because I find that the craft of acting also goes parallel with your own natural process of growth and maturity. Have you seen the two actually go hand in hand, and how do you handle that?
Yeah, look, like I said, I think I've learned a lot from this career, from acting. I think it's a more of a fuller experience when you will experience life on a different and more enjoyable way if you allow people to be themselves. And I think the insanity as well of saying that my way or the highway, for me, it's just the weirdest, sort of injustice you can do yourself. I think because there's a lot that you can learn. I definitely have learned a lot, from my experiences as an actor. And one of the biggest things is this for me that just opened up my, my life, my experience with life. That I've had to learn to embrace different, cultures and different people. I've learned to kind of be at ease, and when you do that, you allow people to be themselves, and that's like so pretentious saying you allow people to be themselves. You stay out of people's way, and you embrace them. Just as much as you would like to be embraced. Right? No man is an island.
Yes.
So but what I've learned. Okay.
And how's that blown up kind of informed also your, in Setswana we say maitshwaro, how you hold yourself, how you carry yourself in public. I'm sure, we've had these conversations before of some friends that I've had to fall off, some people around you that you've had to let go of, meeting new people. Has it actually informed, has it made you more conscious and intentional about, that part of your life?
No, for sure. I think the biggest thing is, the biggest part of the way I'm really fortunate is that it happened after the fact. So I never really had to become mature because of the success. The success was a little more manageable because I had already grown up. As you say, bro, 12 years ago, we were like, these crazy niggas. Imagine giving that nigga this.
Yeah, no.
No. It'll be a complete waste. So I think God was very great in engineering the way everything played out. And, I was married all before the wife, the success and stuff all came once I was matured, I believe, because Lesego and I had been dating for a long time. We met at the lab, as you'd know. And yeah, dog, way before things really popped off, I was secure in who I want to be as a human being, as a man. I knew I wanted to be a husband. I knew I wanted to be a dad. So already I was moving in a certain direction where I think I became ready for this level of responsibility as opposed to the other way around. You always miss the child star years, right? When you turn 16, you're like, fuck, it's running away. It's running away.
But maybe it was a good thing.
But maybe it was a good thing, bro. And as we say before we started rolling, that you actually have to be more grateful for the things you didn't get as opposed to the things you do. I mean, I always look at it as this is my opinion and how I work. I know I'm good. So if you finally see that, I'm just like, welcome.
Welcome.
Phew, you know? But when I don't get a job and I finally see it, I'm always like, phew, thank you, Lord. I see what you were doing. Thank you for that. I mean, I'm grateful for everything, and I'm always like, thank you, Lord, for helping them see what you've put inside of me. But I've never worked from a validation point of view where I'm like, I need that other person. Maybe it comes from being an artist, right? Because we work in isolation. We paint on our own. We live. You don't paint. Acting is so strange, right? Because before you finish the picture, you need these validation steps, your audition, your callback. But in my head, when I'm making the character, I'm done. From that first minute you gave me the script, I read and I performed it. That's the nigga. He's not going to change. Maybe you're going to put clothes on him and you're going to put him in the set. But like, that's him. So what I do with my auditions now, I do everything. I just put on the costume and everything. So you like, and my coach always says, make it feel like a movie take. I just give you the movie take so that we don't waste each other's time. Because now, will it become a power play when you're trying to adjust what's already? Because in my head, I'm done. This is Mkhele, guys. Whether you're going to add another jacket on him, but me, I found him the day at the audition. Plus, Mkhele was a self-tape. I found him that day in my room. That's him. He doesn't get more him than him. Maybe you're going to add an actress and other characters to paint your picture. But for me, so I never work in reverse where I'm like, is it nice? And then you get the audition and then, did it work? And you get and I think I've been such a relief to some directors because they're like, he knows. I'm safe with him. Instead of that actor is always nagging on, did you like it? What do you think?
I'm thinking, what do you think about that? Yeah.
We don't care, man.
Let's move on.
Let's move on.
Yeah, which is a wonderful thing, man.
I try, bro.
Yeah. Now, with credits on dramas like Isbaya, Jacob's Cross, which we've just mentioned, House of Zwide, you've demonstrated versatility across different genres. Just tell me, how do you approach, directing different types of genres, and do you have a preference in any particular genre?
I love action. I love action. I love anything that helps me escape my present reality. And when it's done so well, it resonates with me so much more. I do like drama as well. Drama is accessible. It's close to me. So I'm drawn to those two. I love laughing. Comedy also is something that I love. I love making people laugh because I love sharing emotions. So if I hear a joke and it makes me laugh, I want to share the joke with somebody else. But to try and answer your question, I think I won't call it versatility. I'll call it humanity, because I try to find myself in every story that I tell. I try to find a connection between the characters, that I see on the script page. What is it about this guy that makes him like me or makes her like me? So I try to wear their shoes, and that takes, of course, somebody that takes me being open to engaging with people as well as the actors who are playing those parts. To find the shared humanity, the commonality. And the moment I'm able to do that, right, then I'm able to say, okay, I can tell this story from a position of truth. I always believe that as a filmmaker, you can't tell a story that you don't understand. That's number one. You can't tell a story you're not familiar with. You can't. I mean, telling a story is like writing a journal, if you know what I mean, and the journal is personal. So if you're not honest with what you write in the journal, you know what I mean. People can spot BS from a mile away.
True.
Yes. So that's what I try to do. I try to basically walk in the shoes of the characters, and try to find some understanding, and that helps me kind of like navigate how to best position the story for the benefit of the audience. Because if I can't feel the character, right, then it's stupid for me to expect the audience to feel it.
It's powerful, man.
Such a disrespect or a misunderstanding of the value of the creative industries in this country. That's why I think the legislators have taken this approach of not listening to advice from people who've been telling them for years, because we've been advocating for this for years, that don't put these things in this
But why
law.
aren't they listening? I mean, sorry to say, but like, you know, the creative arts played a massive role in emancipating and keeping the spirits of the people alive when it was time for transition into the new, you know, political dispensation, when people were about to go into full-scale war. We used the arts. So there's no way people don't see the cultural, you know, importance of what we're doing. I mean, it's massive. So why are they ignoring, you know, the legal side and you know, people being compensated what's due to them?
Number of reasons. They don't understand copyright. They don't understand how copyright works as it pertains to the creative industries. So one thing that they've also done is that they've taken a one-size-fits-all approach to this copyright legislation. Copyright legislation deals with different works in different sectors. I'm focusing on music because obviously music is that's my space. But they were responding to the cry that musicians were dying poor. That's what they're trying to fix, right? They're trying to fix that. They're trying to fix access issues. So things like textbooks for students. They're trying to fix things like that. They're trying to fix a whole bunch of things because, I mean, let's be honest, historically speaking, creatives have been really exploited quite badly. They're still dying as paupers. There are problems in the creative industries. So bless them, they're trying to fix that. They just don't understand that you can't have the rules of the game for music applicable to film and television, applicable to book publishing, applicable to animation. It's not gonna work.
But Ben, with that said, I mean, now obviously after COVID and during COVID, we've seen a huge rise in, you know, self-tapes. Not that the self-tapes weren't there before, but obviously they were there on merit. You'd find that maybe an actor's on set somewhere, or the director's not in the country, and they want to see, you know. So but now, you know, it seems like a self-tape is quite a big thing, and it's more efficient, and I think it might be a bit more cost-effective for some of these guys. I don't know. Not really. Okay.
Like you say, the process is still the same.
It's the same.
It still takes time.
I still have to look at them.
You still have to look at them.
You know,
the pain.
But one thing, I know actors complain about self-tape, but the one benefit, I think it is a benefit, is that we get to see more people. That's the other thing. It's like we'll send out a brief and we don't need to... Because what tends to happen is that sometimes as a casting director, you'll be like, okay, I know these agents and all these other people, so let me contact them. They have these people, and then be like, okay, who's new and that whole kind of thing. Now with self-tapes, you're like, here's a new agent, let me try them. Send us your people, let's see who you have. So there is that. And also the opportunity to see more people. Because the whole scenario is, let's say we have a day where we have to do casting, give each person like 15 minutes or whatever, so we can see, I don't know, maybe 20 or at most, so that's the number if like we do a full day. But with a self-tape, so it's like we send it and then we give everyone like 3 days to prepare. And then on the day, there was a time where we had, how many? Like 200, close to that. Yeah. So you cannot see like 200 actors, even if you book the whole week. That's not possible.
My goodness.
So yeah, so we're able to see all those people. And then out of all of that, I think like 40 were good. I was like, okay, we cannot send this to the director, so we have to whittle it down and all kind of thing. And then there's some people like, whoa, this person is interesting. There's a project coming. Put them on the side to consider for that. So
fantastic.
That's what self-tapes have done. That's what people need to understand, is that now we get to see more people.
And I mean, in the process and your journey that you've walked, this is, 12 years you've been in this business now. I'm sure you've seen a lot of people start and fall off it and let go, and you know, you've been witnessing quite a lot of that. And you know, I was asking myself, okay, but what is it? And it's just, as you said, it is the passion. But how have you been, you know, putting it together to a point where you're able to sustain your life at this point?
First mistake I think people do is having those eyes for the money. You know, you get your micro budget and you're thinking, I'm taking 70% of this. and I'm putting 30 into the film, your first big problem. Clearly, that also tells me you don't want to invest in your craft. Yeah, you're not investing in the craft. How do you expect the client to also invest back in you when they don't see what you bring to the table? So that's the problem I see people do. So I used to, throw everything into the craft, and I say, hey, this must blow their mind. They must see the quality I put in there. They must see the story I put in there. They must see the actors I have in here. They must see the storyline. And maybe they can trust me more to say, hey, when you send another one, they say, another good one. It still has to be good at the end of the day. Another good one, they can say, oh, okay, do it again. Do this one again. So I think there's nothing else. I think people, it's just greed. They just don't want to grow their craft. They just want the money quickly. So if that's the case of you wanting money, I think you are slightly moving around in the wrong industry, especially in South Africa. You need to craft your skill of whatever you are doing in terms of the work ethic you put in, the crew people that you are finding. You can't just take people that have no idea in holding a camera and say you'll run the whole set. No. Put everything in that pay crew and get your product. That product is going to get you another product. That other product is going to get you 10 products.
Do you think there's a gap within the marketplace, within the space, for training of young, aspiring film and television entrepreneurs? Because I think there's we're not kind of correlating what happens on the field with what the young people are learning at school. And I find most ambitious young filmmakers are unable to survive, the tides of business when they eventually do try and register a company and it's not functional. So do you think over and above what happens in the actual institutions, there might be a gap for focusing on empowering young entrepreneurs, young filmmakers?
Definitely. And it's not just young filmmakers, it's just young entertainment people. I mean, you've seen what the youngins have done. They've literally proven to us that content is king right now. Whether be it skits that they do, the music that they produce, everything right now is based on what the youngins are doing. But what's a disservice to them is that by the time they leave their schooling, and when I say that, I'm making the assumption that they're not going to tertiary level. By the time they leave matric, they don't really know what they want to do, number one. Number two, have we really truly equipped someone by telling them that they can pass with 30%? If I give you now 10 million and I said, go produce this thing, you're giving it to someone that has had the bar lowered so much for them to pass that they will not cope with what's really happening in the industry or in life in general. So we need to really look at the way we teach, what we teach. Some people said, there's a podcast I really like, Ntate Mashabel. He's had a couple of actors on there, and a lot of them complain that it's almost as though we've forgotten that this thing is part of our culture. Whether it's someone playing drums, doing these sketches, or everything basically is something that we've lost, which was part of our culture. And even when you look at plays that used to happen in the olden days, it's not the same like what used to happen in the Market Theatre. It's not the same. Funny enough, I've never been to the Market Theatre. I know it is, but I've never watched the show. But from the podcast I've listened to or watched, a lot of them have come from there.
Yeah, me too. I'm from the Market Theatre Lab.
Like, one of my favorite actors, Ntate Hamilton.
Yes, Bantosh.
When he then talks about some of the work that he's like, no, we did on Hosa Albert, and you're like, what is this Hosa Albert? And you realize then that there's a huge part of our history that's forgotten. We've taken it and we've shelved it, we've archived it, and no one cares about it, and no one cares to actually teach those kids about it. So we really need to look at where the world is going. Because like Trevor Noah says, the world goes there and we constantly go there. But now that we know that content is king, are we helping these kids understand that you can monetize this thing?
Yeah.
We are not.
We're not.
So that's why you find that sninging, some kid has your number, you met at an event or at a gig, and he just sends you a WhatsApp, sure. Who's this? The next thing you know, Wavefire, you play, it's a song. And sometimes you play the song, you're like, it's actually a dope song.
Yeah,
Like,
sure.
but what has he done? He's taking his IP and
he just gives it like that. He does not know.
He does not know. He does not know. Even if you say to him IP, he doesn't know that that's intellectual property. So we need to start teaching these type of things. And these type of things, sit with what? Law?
Yeah.
Certain,
Get law.
Then let's bring it in. Because we can see that the kids are struggling. We can see that the kids are very talented. They give us some of the best songs, best kids, and then they wake up 2 years down the line. Excuse me. Maka's never paid me for that thing.
So, now we thought you were the hottest guy.
Yeah. Do you get what I mean? Someone saying, no, I drew something on a page and someone saw it and they copied it. But don't a copywriter. Like, this is your thing. On the idea, let's make sure we know that this is a Karabo idea, so that if anyone tries to do it somewhere else, they have to come and give you some money.
This is the conversation that I usually have with people who are now colleagues and we used to be classmates, and also some colleagues who I met who've gone to film schools. I know there's a producer, and she was like, actually, what I learned in varsity, I could have learned, while doing the job. Or with us who come from theater school, there's so many misconceptions. Like, we came from like old school lecturers who were like so anti-social media, so anti the influencer, kind of wave. And that kept a lot of us, behind. And you see it when you're on set. I mean, let's be honest, influencers are being they're being hired because they can bring in those ratings. And some of these kids are actually nice people. And I speak to them, I don't really care. But I see how, like, my generation, the thespians, are kind of looking at the influencers, and the influencers are like, well, we're smarter than you. We could G-pole the system. And the thing is, if with good education, we could find a wonderful balance between the two.
That's exactly what Ndate Hamilton said on the podcast I watched. The issue now that you're facing is that I'm investing my money. I need to get a return on my investment. So now you can't tell me that I need to wait a certain period of time in order to gain that money back. Whereas I've got a cast that has 1 million following each that could easily ensure that my show is successful. So that's why you'll find that a lot of these influencers are being casted on shows. They are featuring on reality shows. And you also need to understand the fact that we are not in the olden days. Things will keep changing. Look at what's happening with genre Yamapian. What's happened? You had Mahrodman doing a particular genre, but then the young ones couldn't really get into the genre, and then they found their voice in Mapian. So this is what's happening on TV. You find that the influencers are the Mapiano field, right? But what you then realize is that somehow they lose their ways because they're also not learned in this art versus someone that's been in this business for decades, right? So what you then need, you need that mixture. However, that mixture comes with man, because I can understand how a thespian would feel that an influencer is on the show, is probably playing lead because she has a huge following and is getting, for example, I'm not saying this happens, she's getting R1 million, and I'm someone with...
It happens all the time.
Yeah.
We always get millions.
I have skin in the game. I'm playing supporting lead and I'm told, Gaya 5,000 a call.
Okay.
Do you get what I mean? The differences then start show when the influencer rocks up in a Range Rover, for example, and the thespian rocks up in a Tez. When we go back home, the thespian or friend, so with the influencer goes. And don't get me wrong, I am not saying that the influencers don't deserve this thing. To wake up, take videos, do all of these things, whether you like it or not. It's worth. And you forget that these very influencers are unemployed youth. They're just trying to make a buck so that they can, eat at the end of the day. And so it's also unfair to then say, yeah, but we shouldn't have these kids here. It's not a fair thing. You need to bring them in. If anything, say to them, listen, we want to do a production which is going to end next year. Not a production that is in a month. No, there's a production we're going to do. It is in a year. We are bringing Tate Hamilton to play supporting lead. We want you to learn from him before we start shooting this thing. So learn, get the skill from him, and then by the time we shoot this thing, Tate Hamilton has earned some money, in coaching these kids and getting them up to standard. Because whether you like it or not, they are working. But sometimes you've seen on the show, this person is not an actor, this is not an actress. This thing is not working. But when you look at who they've been paired with, they've been paired with amazing talent, So you need to then start looking at a production and respecting it more. We need to get out of this situation where we're shooting now for now.
Yeah.
If you look at some of the movies that we love so much, Bad Boys, how long do they shoot those movies for? How long do they edit those movies? We want to shoot a month, edit with it next month, 2 months, have it on.
But let's be honest, it's not us. It's those who eventually own the IP in perpetuity.
Yeah, but I can argue and say, yeah, it's them, but at the same time, they are forced because they've given Marcus a budget, and because he didn't have the license, he crashed that vehicle. He can't deliver the episodes that are required. And now they run to Karaba. They say, yo, listen, we have a slate we need to fill quickly. Can you shoot? Do you get what I mean? So it would be nice to just take the blame and put it on someone.
Yeah.
Put it on the institution. But we also need to look within and say, what are the things we are getting wrong? How can we improve us so that we can go negotiate better?
True.
But if you've not done that introspection and you go there, they'll give you another 12 million and you'll squander it again.
Some people advise to say, no, if you are inexperienced at writing or if you're experiencing writer's block, which I wonder if you go through that. Apparently they say, just take a pen and get a paper and just write.
Yeah.
Does that actually help?
I mean, I think it does. There's a book called The Artist's Way.
Yeah.
Very good book for like any writers like going through a dry spell or like just trying to figure out a new relationship with their creativity.
Any idea who the author is?
I think it's Julia Cameron.
Okay.
Julia Cameron, The Artist's Way. She talks about how every morning when you wake up as a writer, you should just write on I think it's like 2 pages. Just stream of consciousness, just write. What you want to work on as a storyteller will come out on those pages. You won't find it on the day you write that first day or the second day or whatever, but like it'll start becoming clearer what's bothering you, what's wrong with the world that you want to talk about. And for me, a lot of things bother me about the world we live in.
Oh, yeah.
And so I don't think I ever really have writer's block. It's always trying to figure out like what's the best way to say this without saying that, like what's a good way to say I love you without saying I love you to someone? What's a tragic way that can be said? I'm always thinking about like just what's a better way to tell a story we all have experienced in some shape or form, but we'll also all still find some sort of universal trait about it that like feels true. The truth is like what I'm chasing usually. So if you're chasing the truth, I think it's hard to like run out of story. Like there's so many injustices in the world. Everybody's going through something. And so if you look around you hard enough, there's always a story there. That's my problem in the company. I'm usually always telling Charlie and Umusila, like, that's a story, we should work on that. And they're like, we're still working on those other 10, you said our stories too. But yeah, I'm chasing story.
And actually, I think what would have been more interesting with the chapters is maybe they use the Hitman's Code as the chapters instead and made it something interesting like that. Tie the story of the code because it's so important.
Another thing, I felt like it was supposed to be longer.
Really?
I think so. Because the chapters, the way, like the build-up of Lucy's character alone, that's an entire movie on its own.
Sure.
And it feels like it just drops off.
Oh, and then we just...
It's like they pulled a Game of Thrones on us. Like,
Season 8.
Like the build up was so much. I mean, even the part of the who's the guy with the rhino horns and the poacher.
I don't know.
His world is so big, and he's got these henchmen. He's got and it doesn't stretch as much as you'd like it to stretch.
Yeah, and I feel like that was just dropped in on us. I'm not gonna lie to you, like his character. I mean, it made sense for the story, but we didn't have, like, I didn't have enough hints of him.
And
for us to like.
I don't get enough of the elder hitman, the retired hitman, the taxi driver.
Yeah.
Like, I don't get enough of each and every one of the chapters. Each and every one, for me, I mean, I'll go on a limb, I'll go as far as saying a mini-series, you can quote me on that, would have sufficed.
Actually.
And that would have given them, I think,
more time
exactly to
actually
develop,
see what you're saying. Yeah,
to develop
I
the
see what you're
story,
saying.
and because it feels like the opening beautiful, and then they come with Lucy's story, and it builds and it builds, and because we have 1 hour 30 minutes, we have to jump
Now
to
we
the
have
next
move to
chapter.
the next thing.
Exactly.
No, because it's funny, like I was even saying, I think we were talking about it earlier, where I was like, I don't know enough about like Frank the hitman, because I was like, I want more information. I want to like, why is he the way he is? Yeah, okay, sharp. We found out that he was about to get hit and whatever, but like he retired and he's this really like, what do you call it? Like prominent, famous hitman amongst the like tribe, right? But then it's like, where are you?
We
in
don't
the
see
story?
much of that.
Yeah, you're like a retired taxi driver, but like, okay, cool. Not retired. You retired and you became a taxi driver. Cool. Why pick the taxi driver route? Why are you in Joburg? Why are you? You know what I mean? All these questions of like, why are you doing the things you do? Yes, the hitman's world is lonely. Is there someone you're eyeing on the side there that we could be like, okay, he's trying. He wants to fall in love, but it's hard for him. Does he have friends, a friend, anything? Like, you know what I mean?
Because even like bringing us, like centering the story around the hitman's code. So bring us then into the world of the hitman.
Yes.
We don't know much even about the hitman, like the hitman who goes out and performs the hit, which then propels the story forward. We don't know much about him.
And it's literally named after him. And I think that's it's a pet peeve of mine when a story is named after a character and I know less about them. And not intentionally.
The character is not explored that much.
Yeah, and again, it's not to say that the film is bad, but it
It's
would have
not.
been more
It's
interesting.
great.
It really would have been more interesting to focus on the hitman. I think that's pretty cool because, you know, and I love Lucy's storyline, it's really great. But I think, yes, if we knew more about them, more than just the codes that are told to us in voiceover and then the, what do you call the thing? The conversation that he had when he met his friend. Aside from those two moments, it would have been great if we were like seeing more of like, you know, do they just sit around on a stoop until someone comes with money? You know what I mean? Like, I feel like there's more to it, like, you know what I mean? Like, so, okay, we've spoken about the character of Soweto. We've spoken about our expectations, but story-wise as a whole, what do you feel about it?
Honestly, you want me to answer honestly? Okay.
We only do
I'm not a
honesty
liar.
here.
Okay, so what happened with me, I think, as you said, I was quite surprised in terms of the direction that it took. And, you know, sometimes you watch films and you were not there in the making of it. So your perception, you know, your perspective is kind of different. But I was like, oh, I wish they touched on that character more. Or maybe they stayed with that person more.
Yeah.
Or maybe they could have built a more wholesome picture had they not delved into, like, certain, yeah, I'm saying. So for me, I did kind of feel a bit like, all over the place, and then the movie's over. You know what I mean? Like I didn't have time to see that character through, see that
one
get
through.
like or be content. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I feel like I understand what they were trying to do in terms of, I guess, the honesty of what happened. But I felt like narratively speaking, it could have been more to chunk on. Like I felt like it was just not edible. And I think sometimes maybe it's because we focus on something being funny that we forget to still tell a story.
Yeah.
So
and I hear what you're saying because I feel like, okay, firstly, it's already hard enough to tell a story by 3 different people in like an hour and a half.
Exactly.
You know, that's like
we need
ridiculous.
is 2 and 3. It should have been episode 1, episode 2, episode 3. Like,
Yeah, but it's fine. It happens. We,
Say
you know,
the
rom-coms,
less,
it's not new. But I
Yeah.
think it is very difficult to do that in general. And I think they were
Yeah.
trying to honestly, and I'll give them props for it, give everyone enough time.
Yeah, I
but
get that.
it does take away from, I guess, we should have had a main character for real, which I'm assuming is the older brother. But
you see, you had to assume.
Yeah, but I mean, he's the face of the thing, so
Yeah.
I'm gonna give it to him. But you know, he's the main character, and yes, his story was there. But I think because we wanted to make sure the other brothers were also there,
Mhm.
they kind of forgot to give us more of an understanding. How did he
Yeah.
meet his girl?
Yeah.
Why is he so afraid of commitment? Why?
Yeah.
You know, just him being a charmer boy, he likes to look at girls.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I think for me it just kind of battled because like which love story are you actually following? Like
Exactly.
which
And
love
who are you
story
rooting
supposed
for
to,
on the
You
most?
see, which one do you like? Which one are you supposed to hate them or are you supposed to love them? Or like are you getting what the filmmakers were trying to? Or was it an open-ended question? Because we putting questions out there these days.
No,
so.
true. And I think also maybe it's just the way they did it, because I understand it's a race to the altar, right?
Yeah.
But I think the issue was, I'm trying not to spoil things.
No, I hear you. Because in your mind you have
I'm
that
trying not
scene.
to,
Okay.
so I'm trying not to spoil things because I want you to still go watch it. But I think the only issue is that maybe, let me compare it, and I'm sorry to compare, but I'm going to compare it to other things.
Yeah.
Let's say, because I said so, it's three sisters, and they are essentially, trying to figure out their lives and whatnot. Should technically be divorced. The other one's in between. And it helps us ground ourselves because they're not all in the same space of being single in the same way.
Yeah.
Because the other brother messes up so quickly in the story because
Yeah.
he looks like he's a cheating what.
Yeah.
And then everyone's single. And now we all have like a month.
Yeah.
But how about, maybe one brother's girlfriend is too like reluctant to get married. She's afraid of marriage.
Exactly.
And
Give us resistance.
you know what I mean? And
I
she's
hear
like, she's too
you.
scared. So I think that with me, they could have kind of tried to just focus on, like, it can't be the exact same story for everyone.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work. It's not like it is exactly the same. We
Yeah.
know the storylines are a bit different. One had a serious girlfriend.
Yeah.
One is too picky to get someone else,
It's
and the
giving
other one
contractual.
is gay.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
that was, I get it, but
Yeah.
it's just like, maybe the one who's picky is really not sure about his girlfriend, and he's trying to like, it's like, she's not the one though that I want. And it could have been something interesting like that, just so that we could have had established characters, and it wouldn't be hard for us to.
Yeah,
You know what I
I think we really just wanted edible, like a thicker book for all of
Yeah,
them.
or more time so we can get to know each
exactly, because
person.
even with the one we're like, is he gay? We didn't really have time with him. Like it's only if you can catch subtext or you like nosy. I'm nosy, so there's certain things I just caught.
Yeah.
But not everybody was out here. You know what I mean? And it's
Tryna,
like, there's things where you want to shock the audience, but you also wanted to give them so much subtext that like mentally they're like, wait,
What's
why didn't I
up?
see that coming?
Yes.
As opposed to like, whoa, I'm just shocked. You know what I mean? Like it's a different kind of shock, I guess.
And look, I don't even think at all they did bad with like the characters. I actually really,
Yeah.
really, really like
I
the
really
characters.
liked each and every one of them. It was
Dude,
just
like,
crazy.
Each of them are quirky and they're fun, and I feel
Yeah.
they're very dynamic. I feel very different about each of them. But I was just like, I wish I had more time with them. And I think the reason we didn't was simply some of the stuff I said, that everyone's too similar. And it sucks, but I really, really liked each person. So I'm not even mad at them.
I did, even though the one character, like, I'm like, I don't know if they exist in South Africa, but like,
What, Menzi?
Yeah.
The nerd.
But it is
I've met some-
2024.
I've
Really?
met some
Yeah, that's the
pedantic-
thing.
Hey.
There are people like that.
Maybe
so-
not like that, like exactly like that.
Yeah.
But they are there.
Because I'm not gonna lie, when I watched that character, I likened it to like Monk and like
Yes, oh my god, and I'm watching Monk.
Good Doctor. Same.
So technically Menzi is autistic, which is fine.
Yeah.
I think that's my.
But did they land that plane? Were they
No.
trying to land that plane? Do we South Africans know? Was that a thing? Or because you and I know what autism is, do we then attach it to
No,
that?
that's true.
Or is he just obsessed? Is
Yeah.
he just a perfectionist? Is he just
Yeah. Like
insecure?
what
Is he just one of the brothers that never got time to find out his identity and therefore he chose to be strict? Because I think for me, I can speak for myself. Like I became that kid that was like, I got to see it through because like my brother didn't see it through. Anybody
Yeah,
else?
so I have to be the
you
one.
see what I'm saying? So it's like you don't know if that's what they wanted to achieve or. But I think that's the
Yeah.
thing sometimes about films is you take it what you take away, and that's
And
your
that's it,
truth.
and it's up to you. No, for real, bruh. But it would have been more interesting if he was actually, let's say, a character with autism, right?
Yeah.
Like if they really kind of played with that. Maybe we don't really understand it, right? As South
Yeah.
Africans, and if you know how the brothers would tease him, but that's
Yeah.
just he's like, I'm just kind of like this, and
Yeah.
I need to
Yeah.
feel like this kind of thing.
I respected that he owned that though. That's
Yes.
one thing
Yeah,
I think I
shame.
respected
I
about
did.
the whole.
He didn't turn
film.
into a new person.
Yeah.
He just was like, I might need to adjust who I want in my life.
Exactly.
But I am me. So
even that though, like I wish that love story could have had more time on screen.
Because I
with the
loved
chef.
it.
Because like I saw it coming. I was like, this is where you guys are
Dude.
going. And then they didn't. I feel like they didn't land us there. Like at the
Yeah.
end of the movie, you love the entire movie, but you didn't walk away falling in love with anybody.
Exactly, and it's like, and it was there, and I'm not.
Exactly.
It was there. Like there was no.
rom-coms, there's supposed to be a tear in the corner. Like you know what I mean? Like dang, I wish I knew what happens next. You know what I mean?
Yes. You know,
that's how I personally
because
feel.
I really love their love. I like them.
Their personalities.
I like
that
them.
could be a part two.
Dude, I'm just. maybe. So it's a love story
Hint.
part 2. Cooks in the
Like,
kitchen. I don't
exactly.
know. Okay, don't take that title. I'm sorry, guys. When I saw fighting, I wanted to cry. I was like, this is choreographed.
Yeah.
I was just like, it looked good. There was fighting in the beginnings. They were fighting. I
Yeah,
was
that
like,
one was
oh.
exciting. I like that first action scene. So in the house and the fighting all the way out, shooting was cool. But what I will say is the shooting special effects were better in this film.
Yes,
much
yes.
better. I don't remember anything about muzzle flashes, but like visually, seeing all the fighting, everything looks good.